Hi, everyone. Welcome to New Answers Podcast. Some of you know that we are a community of everyday people sharing solutions to life challenges based on our personal experience. We are continuing our conversation on nurturing spirituality as a means of finding those solutions to those daily challenges that we face. On this episode, on this installment, we are calling it Coming Out of the Spiritual Closet. And by we, I mean Tiffany Lee and I. Hi, Tiffany.
Hello, Gwen.
And we are looking to have a conversation about what that really means to each of us, how metaphysics kind of plays into this, what we think it might mean to some of our people who identify themselves as Christians, and then I guess end up with talking about resources that are available for anybody who wants to explore this on their own, explore spirituality on their own, after you've heard something that we've said that you want to investigate a little bit deeper. So that's our intention for this episode, and we are grateful that you're here listening to us. Tiffany, let's just kind of dive in on this. So, coming out of the spiritual closet, what it means to me, and then I'm going to ask you about what it means to you, is that I think that there are a lot of folks out there who may have the sensibility of spirituality, and I think we've distinguished spirituality from like organized religion in a previous episode. But just a quick, brief recap. For me, it's about making your direct connection to your higher power, however you name that higher power, right? Whether it's God or it's Buddha or Allah or whatever name it is, that you are making that direct connection on a regular basis with your higher power. And so I think that there are a lot of us out there who have made that direct connection and do consider themselves spiritual rather than religious. And for me, the organized religion is having these intermediaries, your leader of your church, the pastor, the bishop, whatever the denomination you're in, like there are these people who are intermediaries between you and your higher power. And I don't see it in that way. And that there are more of us out there who are spiritual than religious. And people are, some people are leaving the organized religion and becoming more spiritual, and that those folks we want to invite into our conversation and really get them engaged in a way that not only you working on overcoming any personal challenges that you have, but as a collective, setting our intention to be guided by our higher power towards a deeper realization of what our purpose is, and in that way igniting the light, the divine light within us. So that's how I see it. So let me give you a chance, Tiffany, to share your take on it.
So my take on it, for me, when I say I'm coming out of the spiritual closet, is because I spent a lot of time in the religion of Christianity. And Christianity has a tendency to promote a fear against spirituality, even though we do worship the Holy Spirit. So in essence, spirituality is everything. It's science, it is religion, it's life. But Christianity Christianity kind of pushed away the spiritual side. So I don't want to say that spirituality is not religion, because if you are Buddhist or Hindu or Jewish or many science of mind, that's all spiritual. It's the same, and it's teaching almost the exact same thing, really, in different ways, but the source of information comes from the same source, God, the primary source. So therefore the information is very similar. I think in Christianity, powers that be at the time decided to promote not learning the spiritual side of religion, because they used it to control people. And then the different branches of Christianity have pretty much kept that theme, basically. But the other religions like Hinduism and Buddhism and science of mind or New Thought, that's all very spiritually based. So for me, coming out of the spiritual closet, I heard people saying that, and a lot of it's almost specifically people leaving Christianity because they feel that it's not complete. They can feel the call to spirit, but it's uncomfortable because of the fear that Christians have been taught to be fearful of all the spiritual stuff, the occult stuff, and being authentic and being brave enough to come out and start exploring your authentic spiritual self, because we're all spiritual beings, is really hard to do when you were so deep in your Christianity and your family and your friends are still scared of what you're authentically coming out to be. So that's my situation, and that's why I've been a little hesitant to even share our podcast with some friends, because I mentioned to a friend, she said when she knows something's true, she feels it in her gut, in her stomach. And I said, oh, in your sacral chakra. And she freaked out on me and was like, don't you bring that devil stuff here and da da da. And I was like, what? It's just your chakra system. I don't want to hear it. You're disrespecting me. I don't want no demons around me, blah blah. And I was like, wow.
I've never had a reaction like that, but I've heard about people who look at spirituality as kind of an occult or cult, right? Yeah. Like it is kind of coming from the dark side, or kind of we're looking at demons as deities or something, which is, and I don't understand that, because as you said earlier, from your experience, that all of the religions that are out there have the same kind of foundation and base. I mean, they come from the same original place. They just kind of separated out a little bit,
right?
And but ignored the spiritual side for some reason. And I think we said it in an earlier episode, for women who seem to be, I don't know, more in tune with, their higher selves, the
spiritual side.
And that at some point in history, they were labeled witches and burned at the cross. And
right.
So
right.
That's how intense these differences had gotten to be.
Yeah, and that was during the time when I think it's Rome, and the Catholic Church kind of demonized the gifts of women, and they our gifts come because we are more in tune to the higher elements of the chakra system, the crown chakra, the third eye, and the heart, and that's more attached to source. And then the patriarchs, or the masculine gifts, are more in the lower chakra, which is more grounded. Ultimately, we want to be fully open, all of our chakras, but because women are naturally more with the crown and the third eye, then we receive the knowledge of the gifts easier. We're more mystical, and so women would receive the gifts of healing and sight, basically, future whatever sight, and reading energies. And that's when, and that's a power that the church didn't want women or men to have. And that's why they demonized it. And that's why they started burning women at the stake, calling them witches, where before they were just medicine women. It's funny too, because say some of the women that were really talented in it, and they picked herbs and oils, and which we're doing again now. It's coming back around, right? And really, all medicine's made from nature. But the women before would pick the herbs, and people would go to them for healing.
Yeah. And we are moving our conversation now from what we each have shared about our take on coming out of the spiritual closet. And now we're moving into the conversation about what we personally think it means to our Christian friends, or those who identify themselves as Christians. And so now we're moving into that part of the conversation. And you mentioned that the women having a closer connection and using the natural plants and herbs for healing and for medicine. There are some cultures who are still using those things.
Exactly. Yeah.
So in maybe the Western culture, they kind of got away from that. But where it all started, like you say, medicines are based on those healing properties that are in plants, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, and like you say, the pendulum is swinging back to that. And I think that's why we wanted to do this, have this conversation about nurturing spirituality, because the pendulum is also swinging back to being more in touch with that spiritual side. Because they're really all interconnected, right? And interrelated,
right.
mind, body, soul, all that kind of, they're all interconnected. And so we're swinging back into spirituality and giving people a platform for feeling comfortable about coming out of the spiritual closet.
Right.
And not being intimidated. And then the other thing about, from the perspective of our Christian friends, I don't know that this is something that's been spoken about out loud in that sector, I guess, but using that part of Christianity to control is, definitely one of the reasons that the spiritual side wanted to be, they wanted the spiritual side to be suppressed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that they can use some of the principles, to control populations of people.
Right. So, and the way there was a section of spirituality, of Christianity, that was more spiritual, and that was the Essenes. And there's a couple the Essenes, and I forgot there was another group, and they did use the knowledge of spirituality. They call it the gnosis. Oh, not agnostic, the Gnostics, which and so the gnosis is called the knowledge, whatever. So Jesus taught that, and they followed what Jesus taught and what Mary taught. Okay, and it was more spiritual. So during the time when the Roman government decided they were creating the Bible, and they were choosing what was going to be in the Bible, they chose it based on the canon that they wanted to promote, and it did leave out most of the spirituality. You can't look at Jesus. If you really look at Jesus' teachings, you'll see it's spiritual. So even when I was deeply into the Christian faith, and I had friends that were more spiritual, and I would say to them, like, it's all the same thing, because I'm seeing what Jesus is saying, I see what you were saying. But me personally, I studied Jesus more from the time I was a child, before I even got into the Christian faith. So I saw and tied, I was like, you guys are saying the same thing Jesus is saying. And I saw the connection to Hinduism and Buddhism and other areas of spiritual religions. I didn't understand, because I didn't know at the time, that Christianity the way we know now purposely eliminated that information. And the reason why, and it's not just the reason why it's control, is because when you follow what Jesus was really teaching and what the other spiritual leaders are teaching, it's telling you to go directly to God. It's you aligning directly with God.
Yeah.
That you're getting your orders directly from God as opposed to from them.
Right. From all those, as I call them, intermediaries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and they put so much fear, and there is parts of the Bible that promote the fear part of all the spiritual stuff. But where did that come from? You know what I mean? Like, did they add that? There is proof that they have added stuff to the Bible. They've removed it, they've added, they've changed things throughout years. You can actually, so you have to wonder, like, why do they keep changing things? Why did they, well, you know why, because they don't want you to know your own divinity inside. So the other thing that the Christians, I've noticed a lot of my Christian friends believe, and I did too, is that they believe that no one else believes in Jesus. And that's not true.
Again, I haven't studied it as deeply and experienced it in the same way that you have, but I have come across, I guess, different sects of the Christianity who will say that, whatever another sect is, whatever another, and I'm using that term sect just to kind of parse out, because there are like fragmentation of Christianity, right? And
right.
One Christian person won't, and I shouldn't leave out Judaism, because the Christians will say, the Judas, they don't believe in, they don't believe in Christ. They know Christ exists, right? That Christ exists. So yes, I have come across those opinions, and I never really delved into it deeply enough. But it was a question for me. Like, why would they say that? And is that really true that they don't believe in Jesus? And I'm learning over some years that it's not that they don't believe in Jesus, that it's just there's a different take on it. So
right.
But it's another way of showing how interconnected these practices are. And under Christianity, there's so many different denominations, right? And then there's, like you say, Hinduism, and these other practices, religious practices, but there's still a fundamental, like, everybody has kind of a same basis of start, and then they just kind of splintered off as time went on. Let me just say too that in the conversations that we've been having, we talk about, and this is a way of us helping bring up, I guess, elevate the fact that we do have these spiritual experiences, and that everybody has them. And we talked about instinct and intuition, and we talk about deja vu experiences. We talked about out-of-body experiences that everybody has seemed to have. So that's the spiritual side of us, but don't talk about, kind of suppresses, and the reasons that we're talking about now. And so, just wanted to point that out to say that we do have this connection, and it shouldn't be something that is suppressed. This is why we want to bring it out of the closet, right? And we're now talking about maybe the reasons that it has been suppressed, one of them being control. But let's now talk about the metaphysics behind it. And for me, I haven't gone deeply and studied or done a whole lot of research around metaphysics, but the exposure that I have in terms of metaphysics is through the attendance of Agape Spiritual Center, International Spiritual Center, and the talk about metaphysics. And for me, it's just the basic thing of cause and effect. right? And
Right.
putting thoughts and words out into the universe and having those come back to you. I think in some practices it's called karma, right? Maybe not. That's what I'm thinking. This is from my own personal, experience and exposure. But anyway, metaphysics is a part of this, and let's talk a little bit about that and share your experience and what you've been exposed to, Tiffany, about that, because you're studying this now.
I am studying it now. So I was supposed to be studying this morning. I didn't get open my book. I'm the worst procrastinator. Um, so I guess metaphysics is just the science behind spiritualism. Um, yes, so the cause and effect. Agape and the Center for Spiritual Living, the same place, basically, or the same teaching from Ernest Holmes, teaches that God's source is the back of all creation, and creation is constantly going, which we all know that, right? It's always growing, nothing reverses. And we are creators too. And the difference between, say, what almost every other religion other than Christian believes is that we are divine as well. We have divine spark in us. And so that's why we are creators. And everything's energy and everything's on the vibration. So, and that's where the science or the metaphysics of it comes from, because the reason why when we speak, we're putting out a vibration into the universe. Some people call it the vortex, the whatever you want to call it, but that activity starts growing. It's like planting a seed. So everything we think and speak, but especially when you speak it, the vibration of it is stronger. But when you think it, it's still a vibration coming out of you. So, and that's the cause. Whatever you're thinking is the cause. The effect is the end result, is the creation, whatever became created. So you can put into the universe, if you speak like, I won $1 million, but you can also be thinking, but I'll never deserve $1 million. But both of those, you just stuck into the vortex. And the subconscious, we talked about the subconscious and the conscious, that's all part of the metaphysics. The subconscious wins over the conscious because the subconscious is tied to your emotions. So whatever your emotions are tied to is what is actually going to create.
Is going to manifest.
Manifest. Yeah.
And then quickly going back, so the Christian friends would see maybe this conversation as being blasphemous. Like,
probably.
Here you think that you have the power to do that.
Of God, yeah.
God that has that power. But why? Why would you say that? Why would you think that? We are co-creators with God. We are the arms and hands and the body of God to do God's work. So how is that blasphemous?
It's because they teach. Now, I want to be clear about something. I do believe in the Bible. The Bible has a lot of great stuff. I believe it's the way it's been taught to actually hide all the knowledge that's in the Bible. And yes, there's other elements that could be in the Bible. I mean, it was created, and the verses, the chapters, the books were chosen, but there's still truth in it. And you just have to,
interpretation.
It's interpretation. It's history. You got to know the history of when things were written, what things meant during that time, and it's being interpreted all the time, reinterpreted all the time. So I'm trying to remember why I felt like, I think you said something that triggered me to like say that, because
blasphemous and how.
Oh, blasphemous. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So I do believe in the Bible. Yes. They would call it blasphemous for us to believe that we are divine, that we have a spark of divine in us, that we're all created by God. They do believe that, but they don't believe that we have God in us. So when someone says, that that we're all gods or goddesses, and it's just a word that you don't have to say it like that. We could say we're all divine, you know. Um, the reason why powers that be don't don't want people to have that knowledge is because um it's inner. You can't control them with fear. Once you know and believe in that, you can't be controlled with fear.
Yeah.
And then I was just talking about this with a friend of mine, actually. uh, the fear that they teach and how this world is run right now is not from God, because God specifically says in the Bible that fear is not from him. So therefore the fear of God that they like to teach, like that's not what God wants. You know what I mean? Why would we fear God? And then if we feared God and we also felt that we are a part of God, would we be fearing ourselves? We wouldn't, you know. So therefore we have no control if we just fear God. So therefore, so I think this is just downloading. Therefore, we're gonna listen to the priest that tells us what to do to save ourselves. When
Yeah.
ultimately we don't need to save ourselves. We're already saved and we're whole and perfect. We are expressions of God, is what almost all other religions or faiths believe. And that's that we are of the same spirit. And that's what spiritualism is, right? Is knowing thyself, because we're spirits.
Yeah.
We're all part of the one spirit.
Yeah. Exactly. And so that reminds me of, as growing up in the Presbyterian orientation of Christianity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they would sometimes, as is true from a lot of the denominations under Christianity, the term, the phrase, God fearing. And I always wondered, God fearing, why would we fear God? Even
Right.
before I got into spirituality, it's like, why do we have to fear God? It just didn't compute for me.
It doesn't compute if there's like, God is all loving
Yes.
and you got to fear him. That doesn't make any freaking sense. It never made sense with me. I never feared God. And there would be times when I'd be like, God, you know, blah, blah, blah. Like, I just myself, my relationship with him, and my friends would be like, girl, don't talk to God like that. Like, I never feared God. I didn't, not all churches teach it like that anyway. Some churches do teach it as God's is all loving.
Yeah.
It's more like, I think, like the nationalists and the Baptists, because it's I only hear about it, that term fear God, from my Baptist friends.
Yeah.
So
True.
not all churches teach that you have to fear God, but it makes no sense. You can't be loving and fearful at the same
At
time.
the same time, it just didn't
Yeah,
make sense to me.
all loving and forgiving and of grace, but
Yeah.
fearful. Yeah.
So
And I think that's one of the reasons why so many people are turned away from,
I think so.
yeah,
From the organized religions, yes,
right.
I think so too. And that's why, the pendulum is swinging back and people are becoming more spiritual because they're making a direct connection to God. And to me, this is Gwen talking, in that direct connection, you are getting guidance on how to live your life in a way that is less stressful. I mean, if you just surrender, and I've been feeling it more and more as the more I spend time um, in meditation and being just still and listening or being in nature, the more um, my shoulders are relaxed, and
Yeah.
my forehead with all these lines in it, kind of the creases kind of straighten out, because
Yeah.
I'm not having to I'm relinquishing, releasing, um, surrendering is the word I was looking for. Surrendering all this control that the ego says you got to do. You got to have blah, blah, blah. But no, if you surrender to the higher power and get guidance on what you should do, what actions you should take around your life, there's nothing to be stressful about, because you are getting the, as I say, the God consciousness, the Christ consciousness. Christ is like an example of
Mhm.
what God wants us to be, right? And so that releases all of that tension and all of that
Takes
anxiety. You
it
know,
takes the weight of the world off of you
there
because
you go. The way to
you know then who you are. You know that you're God, therefore you know, or you're connected to God. You know that you can connect with him, you can listen to him, and you know that he takes care of you, as opposed to you thinking you're here on this earth going through life alone, trying
right.
to follow rules, you know, and every time something doesn't go right, you're like, oh, the devil made me do it, or the devil's after me. Everything is outside you. Like you have no self-control. And that's one of the big things about spirituality is the control is in you. Your
Yes.
life is a reflection of you, the way you think, the way you move about life, what you do, is anything and everything you think, say, and do is how your life is going to go. It's created, and it's you. It's self-responsibility,
It is.
as opposed to um, the devil like cursed you or God blessed you or whatnot. It's like, no, he is a blessing. In fact, you're a blessing. You're a version of the blessing.
Yes.
And you make your choices, and every single choice has a reaction. So if you're in a situation with what would be considered a negative outcome, the effect is negative, you have to look back into like, well, what's the cause? And
Yeah.
it's you. It's not the devil doing it to you. It's
Right.
you. It was your thought, your action, whatnot.
Mhm.
And even when I was deeply in the Christian church, I remember having a friend that was extremely Christian, but would do certain things like to get by, because and that's because of the Christian mindset of you're here alone. You could pray to God, and you're hoping that he answers you, but you also think the devil's attacking you, and then making decisions on your own, so doing stuff that's like not necessarily legal, or and then getting caught, and having to live with that, and you know being mad at, this is a bad example, but being mad at God, or like, and I used to be like, why would you do something like, why should God show up to bail you out of a negative situation? You still have to deal with your consequences. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, this was the action you took. This is the earthly response, like consequence of that. So that could be called consequence, karma, effect, whatever, but every action has a reaction. So if your actions are out of love and good, it's going to produce good. If your actions are out of deceit or fear, it's not always out of deceit, but fear-based actions, which we're all, especially because we're our ego, and everything is taught with fear. I'm a business marketing major, and in
Mhm.
business marketing, the number one thing they teach you, the number one sales um, technique they teach you is to use fear. So it's the most effective way. So now when you watch not cartoons, commercials,
Mhm.
now when you watch commercials, you're going to notice that they have to start with a fear or a need based on the fear, because that's going to get your attention. And then they have and then whatever the product you're trying to sell is supposed to remedy that problem, that fear. So anyway, it's just how our world is made right now.
Mhm.
Um, but that's changing.
It's changing because those of us who are spiritual beings and recognize that are coming out of the closet.
We're coming out the closet.
We are using our direct connection with our higher power to guide our actions, and they are God conscious actions. And so I sort of paraphrased a quote that came from Agape and the spiritual sort of guide or leader there, who he thinks of himself, as the leader of Agape, but he is about creating not followership, but other leaders. And so the quote, though, is that I started with. It was a paraphrase when I started, but the quote is, "May our collective, as spiritual beings, and as um, being more cognizant, recognizing our spiritual connection and to the higher power, may our collective intention guide us toward a deeper realization of our purpose, igniting the light of the divine within and around us." That's what our intention is with this nurturing spirituality, that we can bring up the light and nurture that, because we do have control. We do have to, and we have our own direct connection. We don't need any of these intermediary telling us and interpreting, you know, religion, or interpreting what was written about God and Christ for us. We can do that for ourselves. So hopefully there's something that you heard today that resonates with you. And if you want to learn more about spirituality, if wherever you are in your development, I feel like I'm still kind of a nascent at that. There are sources that you can go to. I'm going to call on Tiffany to identify some of them, but one I would direct you to would be Ernest Holmes and his, oh my gosh, the title of it just escaped me. Science of Mind. His Science of Mind. The book. The book is titled Science of Mind, and the author is Ernest Holmes.
Right. Ernest Holmes has quite a few books out there too, but I brought this up earlier with someone. It's a very common statement: change your thinking, change your thinking, change your life. That's also a book by Ernest Holmes. That phrase actually came from him, so that's a really good resource. But also just to attend a Science of Mind church,
yeah,
or Agape,
yeah,
or to develop your spirituality, you could also explore what calls you. Like, listen to that, sit in meditation. I also love Kabbalah. When I lived more in LA, I went to the Kabbalah Center, and that was amazing. And like I said, it's all similar teaching. Go to Buddhists, if you're in LA area or California, you do have a wide range of options. I don't know about other states, but there's a lot of places you can go to it. And then also YouTube. YouTube has tons, like the movement, the awakening on YouTube is huge when it comes to spirituality. And there's a lot of great teachers on there, but what I've learned is I learned a lot through YouTube, but it can be confusing because you can just get immensely overwhelmed with it all. It's great to have a community of people you can talk to and grow. And that's why I like going to Agape or Spiritual Center or Kabbalah Center. Kabbalah is the spiritual version of Judaism, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there are some sources that you can start with, and I'm sure once you access those, there may be others that will come up, as you go deeper into your investigation and exploration of spirituality and want to grow even more. So this has been fascinating. I love this conversation, and there may be pieces of it that we may want to explore more. And if we hear from you, I'd like to hear some comments from you about what you thought or what you heard, and where does it take you. So we invite you to share that with us in the comments below. And also we look for you to subscribe to us so that you can know when the episodes are dropping. And if you subscribe, then you get notification of any new installments that we upload to YouTube. And we're going to be expanding into other podcast platforms, so you can listen out for that. So that'll do it for us for this episode. Thank you, Tiffany, for sharing all of the insights that you have.
Thank you, Gwen.
So, on behalf of Tiffany Lee, I'm Gwendolyn Flynn, Gwen, and we'll see you next time.